Hey,
Hello,
Carson.
everyone. Hey,
Oh,
Sean.
am I supposed to say hi to them or am I supposed to say hi to you? I never know.
I don't know. I think we're supposed to say hi to them.
Okay.
We've
Hi
got the
them.
we've got the smash the like button thing covered now from Jack. Thank you, Jack. We're gonna stick that at the end of every video. I don't know. I don't know what we're supposed to do. Anyways, today we swerved because I got this book. We were gonna do a different book, but I got this book in the mail. It was a book I was really looking forward to. The Last God. The writer is Phillip Kennedy Johnson, and the artist is Riccardo Federici, and then a number of different colorists, including Alan Pasalacqua, who's a guy I know from my hometown, someone I've hung out with, good dude. Um, but I've seen the art in this book, and I was really excited about this book for the art. And when I got the book and opened it up, I was pretty disheartened by the way the art reproduced. I don't know, like on camera, if you're gonna get a sense, but I scanned a number of these and then, have a digital version that we can compare it to as well. So I thought that would be interesting to talk about. Me and Sean don't really talk about color books a lot either. So I thought that would be interesting because we talk about black and white art reproduction. But the actual package is pretty cool. They've got a super, if they would have printed super shiny like this on the inside, it would be nice. So this is something I've complained about before, Sean. Can you explain to me why the hell people do just dust jackets? I hate these things. The explanation is always, oh, it protects the book, so the book doesn't get beat up. These get beat up way easier than a hardcover book, and then books look nasty. So I always take off my dust jackets and toss them. But this, at least, they use the dust jacket. This is like a fantasy Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings, and they printed this nice big.
Nice.
I got it upside down. So like all of the nerdy world building stuff that goes into this with all the maps and all the facts that you're supposed to somehow mentally track, at least they're putting that on the dust jacket. But like why dust jackets?
Yeah, well, I mean, let me just give you my honest opinion, Carson. Dust jackets, out. Not
Okay.
21st century at all. We have robots to vacuum for us. What do we need for dust? You have dust in your house. You live in Alabama. You must have dust in your house.
Yeah, we have dust, but it's so wet here. It's like, yeah, we're not, it's not like Modesto where it was 115 and dry. That was dusty. Yeah.
Well, I
Oh,
mean,
and look at the book without the dust jacket.
yeah, that's some beautiful shit.
That looks cool on my shelf. It looks like an old book.
Yeah, that's the thing
It's
is,
a really cheap, cheesy print, but I like the design idea.
yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, it's definitely of a particular era that maybe has gone by, and I don't know if people just like the things that they had when they were younger, and so these types of things just kind of perpetually happen. But basically, like before, you could print on case bound books. A cover to a book was limited to stamping and things like that. So if you look at you pick up like let's just say like a Victorian era hardback book, it would be a case bound, and you'd have all the decorative elements and motifs and stuff would be stamped into that, because basically the process that it takes to actually print on something that is going to be then mounted on the case is a fairly complex process that is aided by machines, and was not really feasible prior to, I mean, gosh, when did you start seeing printing on the actual case? We're talking about
Like on by the case, you mean?
yeah, the
Yeah.
actual the actual hardback cover.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's what's called a case bound book. And yeah, so here, yeah, I mean, it's a different era. So basically, if you wanted to have printing, they talk about it protecting the book, but really it's a marketing tool. So basically, in an era where it was super expensive or impossible to print on the case itself, you'd make a quote unquote dust jacket so that you could put all the quotes and the sexy photo of the author.
Yeah. Did I get one of those? Did we get one on Strange Death? Where's my sexy photo?
Yeah, we got a sexy drawing of you in there, but
Oh yeah, okay, good.
but yeah, all that snazzy marketing stuff. You couldn't put that on the dust jacket unless you were going to like foil stamp it or something. So, that was just basically a marketing tool. And now you can have that on a case, and the printing on a case is no different than it is printing on paper, because it essentially is printed on paper and then it's mounted with some type of special glue. I've never actually been to a case, a bindery where they're actually doing that work. So I've never seen that firsthand. So I don't know exactly how it works. But if you look at an unbound copy, you can see that it's essentially printed on just normal paper.
And you can see that the paper's like wrapped around here, and then another piece of the end papers are glued over it and stuff. So, okay, that makes more sense to me, the historical context then, because I've asked that in the haul video I did, and people are like, oh, it protects the book. And I was like, what do you mean? That's why I hate them, is they get damaged so easy and they look terrible and they get torn. So I thought that was unnecessary, especially since they did. I think if they would have spent some more money just making this, it looks like a kind of washed out print in person. It looks cool at a distance, but if they would have made it look more like a leather bound book, like just from the get-go, that would have been cool. Like those Berserk books with that leather bound and the red foil, and that's cool, and no dust jacket needed. But I did like the map that they put. So anyways, I know you haven't read this one because I just got it, but to give people a sense of what it is, let me flip over here to the camera view.
Let me apologize in advance for any smoothie sounds. I'm attempting to drink as silently as possible.
What flavor do you got?
Oh boy, we just got that sweet Costco mixed berry.
Costco mixed berry.
Oh yeah.
So anyways, this is like a Lord of the Rings type of fantasy book. The art on it by Federici is amazing. That's why I bought it. The story's cool. It's like there's some evil god and these heroes overcame it, and this king here, King Tyr, supposedly defeated it, but it's obvious that it's like possessed him and is going to come back, and there's a new hero that's going to have to actually defeat it. And then the story is interesting in that it flips back and forth between like the original adventure. Let me see if I can find. So here they'll have like this symbol of the axe. That's like when King Tyr was a warrior, and that was his journey to defeat the thing. And then at other places in the book, they'll have a crown up there. So that indicates like modern day. I thought that was a cool little graphic convention, instead of saying like 30 years ago, now 30 years ago now. So that's the structure of the book. And, within that, I don't think there's much else to say about the story besides like it's a good action adventure fantasy thing. It is a little bit for my taste. There are some of the things that I dislike about things like this, where they overload you with names of people and places right out the gate. So like on the first 2 pages is like the Plague of Flowers, Elven Nations, Guild Eldric, Rivermen, Godslayers, Vecchio Almun, Ferryman, Skull, Jorn. So you're like, Jesus Christ, like I can't uptake all of this. But then pretty quickly they get into focusing on 1 or 2 characters, and you can actually follow what's going on. So it's not bad. But the other thing that I thought was interesting about that, and I don't remember seeing it when I was looking at digital copies, is it very obviously is coming from that kind of factoid overload of the Dungeons and Dragons like role-playing games, because in the back they have like legit, it looks like, I don't know, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons, but this looks like those guidebooks to me where you could probably actually quest this out, and it's strength, dexterity. So not my thing. I never played that. I get a little overwhelmed by too many facts and not enough story. So it's good, but I would still recommend. It's a fun story. Now the problem, and I'll switch over to the screen share. My problem, and the reason I wanted to ask Sean about this, is the print was just, I thought, is this even the same book that I remember seeing digital? Because it's such a worse representation of Riccardo Federici's art. And he like check him out on Instagram. Absolutely amazing artist. Paints too. So hopefully he'll be doing some painted books. But here you can see on screen, this is the scan I did of the book. I don't have it super high resolution this time. And then the reason it's not high resolution is because I was also taking a screenshot on my computer of the digital book, and I have some close-ups, but this is what printed. This is like how it looked as a digital file.
Right.
And I mean, like, I noticed immediately areas like this where there is a lot of dark coloring, which normally with the computer coloring, you try and stay away from things that get that dark.
Right.
But it works on the screen. Here, it just becomes a black mush. And one of the things I like so much about Federici's art, and when I looked at it originally, was it's a very crosshatch based style. So here's a closer up. Here's one of the axes. So this is 30 years ago. And this is the digital version. And then that's what got printed.
Oh, geez. Oh, man.
So like all of this totally lost. And here's another one. You see all of the cross hatching work he does. It's kind of like a Eleuthère Serpillère. Is that how the old Serpillère, old heavy metal artist? And the face here with all the beautiful cross hatching. None of this looks photo reference to me either. It looks like this guy just has, Sean, you always call it pre-visualization skills.
Right. The woman there, the turn right there looks like a reference to me, but yeah, it's definitely manipulating if whatever reference he's using. So I'm curious, just before we even talk about the technique of the printing, what do you think about all this color hold stuff that they've done with the coloring? I mean, it's basically like making all of his actual line work submissive to the color. I mean, just from the get-go.
It makes sense to me because he paints, and his painting style, like, it's very obvious that this is not inked. It's all pencil work. Right. He penciled these pages.
Okay.
And then they colored them. He does do his own painted work, and it tends to have that look of the cross hatching underneath the painting, or he'll it depends. He has oil paintings that just look more like paintings, and then he has pieces where he goes over it more with like ink wash and watercolors. And so I think this was a very close collaboration with the colorist to achieve a more painterly style.
Okay.
So I think that was the intention. And it's one of the things I really liked about the book was that like dark, rich, you call it in painting, you call it muddy colors. You know, they're intentionally desaturated, but they still have like a richness to them that looks painterly. So when I'm looking at pieces like this, you know, in digital, I think that looks really great. Yeah, it's pretty dark in here, but I can still see all the line work, and there's like a richness and an intensity to it that I liked. Something I liked about the book. Is that something you dislike when you're looking at the? Oh,
I don't know. I guess knowing that it's pencil, that makes a lot more sense. I guess I was thinking about this as if we're seeing, you know, essentially like finished pen and ink work. And, you know, for me anyway, like thinking about value in pen and ink, you know, the color should be subservient to the value. But I don't know, like the fact that he's working in pencil, that makes a lot more sense to me. So probably a certain amount of the, you know, it's not going to have that same kind of value manipulation if he's, so that makes a lot more sense now that I'm seeing the original.
So that's, and he does a lot of stuff with, but you can see like ink wash work. This would be an oil painting. So I think he was working with the digital colorist because like this is 12 issues, you know, 400 some odd pages or whatever. I don't think he could paint the whole book. So I think he was trying to take, and you can see here with his oil painting style,
Right.
it still has the line work under it. So I think they were trying to take what he does, and it's really, I mean, you can see where his sketch, and then he goes straight to that finished state
Right.
too. Like if you watch videos of him going, he just it's amazing how he fills stuff in. So yeah, this would be what they were coloring over, and I think that that was a very intentional collaboration.
So it was this released monthly as well as the trade. Is this a trade of a series then?
Yeah, this is a print of a thing that came out monthly. It was a mini series, you know, that came out 12 issues basically, I
Okay.
believe.
Well,
Uh,
will you do some more of the A/B comparison so we can see some of the fill in? Because I mean, that was just fairly dramatic. That one with the crone as
well,
well.
this here, yeah, and then this one, you see
Yeah,
how rich and painterly it looks, and then it's just like,
yeah, that's wild.
and then all of this hatching work up here that is, you know, it's like a whole machine. I don't have the whole page here, but it's like a whole machine. That's I mean 100% lost.
Yeah,
These are scans, so I'm getting a bit of a reflection on that part that rolls over. But this is kind of what it looks like when you read it. I don't, you were asking about the paper. Maybe this reflection here gives you a sense of what kind of ink and paper it is too, because when you're reading it, it has that, like the light is catching on the paper and making it difficult to see as well. Besides the fact that it's like way dark. Uh, and then here you have this cool monster thing and this whole arm here where you can see all the cross hatching,
right.
and then like it's just
Mhm.
black, that like you can't see anything in there. And then I was thinking when I was looking at it, the pages that are lighter reproduce better, like you can at least see the line work. But here's an example of something that's got, you know, lighter colors. They're not going, like this part's pretty dark. As a colorist, I would never go to black like that with my
Right.
colors over top of line work like that. But even in the lighter areas, I mean, like, where did all the color go? Like, I don't know. I was just massively disappointed in this, how they did. And this is a $50 book, you know.
Right.
So I was just curious, like, I know you're not here to see the paper, but what things should people be thinking about when they're dealing with color versus we're always talking about black and white.
Right. Well, it's a tricky thing because you know, a lot of artists, like we've talked about before, really prefer the tactile feel of an uncoated paper. When we say coated or uncoated in regards to paper, what we're talking about is whether the paper came from a mill, you know, made from pulp and then was pressed out and made directly to paper, or whether it had an clay additive added to it. And when you think about glossy paper, a glossy paper is basically like a clay additive that's added to the surface of it along with a gloss that gives the paper, I mean, the purpose of it is to give the paper a very, very smooth surface to it. And basically, the smoother the surface is to the paper that you have, the better color reproduction you're going to be able to get on paper. It's actually true for line art too. But the line art, the considerations are a little bit different because you don't have what's called a halftone screen if you're making line art. So basically, the
So it's not
smoother,
dots, basically, right?
right? Not made up of dots. So when the smoother the paper is, the less the ink will expand when it hits the paper, and the less the ink will absorb when it hits the paper. And so you get a really, really crisp reproduction on a really smooth paper. Well, the easiest way to make smooth paper is to throw, you know, to make a coated paper. And but the thing is, people have gotten, especially, you know, artists who are used to working on something that's not coated. I mean, almost nobody draws on super slick coated paper because it sucks.
Yeah, it's
But
miserable. It's
right.
totally miserable.
So artists like the tactile feel of an uncoated paper, but the thing is, a lot of uncoated papers are not smooth enough to be suitable for color printing. And what happens is you're printing on something that's not very smooth, that ink starts expanding, and basically the darker values, the darker that the values are, the more expansion you see in those areas because the dots are closer together. to each other. And so there are certain kinds of corrections that they can do on a modern press. The pressman or press person, press woman, all of them I've ever met are men, by the way, but that's a small sample size, I suppose.
Sexist, Sean, sexist.
The press person is operating the press and has, on a modern press, has what's called color curves that they are able to adjust by eye as they're running the press. And basically what this does is changes the density of the different inks in order to adjust the amount of fill-in that's happening. But that's a really delicate thing, and it only gets you so far because you have to have your press totally up to spec. If you're doing a long run, unless you're going to stop and clean in the middle, like things tend to get a little more gummy as you're going. It's possible that the first couple 100 copies of this looked pretty good. But
so as you're saying, if I would have gotten earlier, damn it.
It's hard to tell. I mean, it's really hard to tell what exactly it is. And as you and I have learned on our own projects, there are a lot of unless you're actually there at the printer, there's a wide variation of what a printer will put out and what they might think is acceptable depending on who's running the press and what time of day it is and if they're about to go on vacation.
Yeah.
But in this case, it might just be unsuitable. It might just be unsuitable paper for how dense this is. I mean, I think that if they were working this dark with the color, they probably had planned it to be printed on a coated stock. And I wouldn't be surprised if the coated stock wasn't what they were actually planning on working for, because this is very, very dark.
Yeah, I mean, it is like I would not personally go this dark with my colors on the if I'm doing computer coloring. But in digital, it works. Mm-hmm. And I have seen, I'll tell you something that I do want to look at eventually, and just I'll shout out Magnetic Press. They've done some books that I've picked up, especially the Infinity 8 books, have just the most gorgeous color prints I've seen. And it's on coated paper, but they could get these super rich darks like this, and it looks like it does on a computer screen, or even more vivid. So yeah, it strikes me that and that's what I thought when I'm looking at it. It looked like a paper that absorbed the ink and, like you said, filled in. Because like here, where you have all of these lines, even if it didn't get dark, like when I did have the 1200 dots per inch, I should have kept one of those. You can just see that these lines bled, and there's no lines anymore. It just becomes part of the value structure of that super dark color that printed there. So that's where I was most disappointed in, is I thought part of what made this art so great, beyond the richness of the color, was his incredible crosshatch work. Like you can see it all over the shoulder, and it just totally disappeared. Like all of that just totally disappeared. All of this totally disappears. And they tend to color very darkly over where he crosshatched, and then on the places where he's not doing it, well, I guess here he's crosshatching quite a bit, but a lot of the times the things that get colored lighter are areas where he hasn't really done much work.
Right.
And so it's like, well, you just totally got rid of everything he did. Like on the face here,
right.
There's not much work done there. But I mean, even that doesn't print so well. Like this area here.
Right.
So I don't know. It was just something that when I saw it, I was like, okay, that's what we're talking about this week.
You can see that a lot of those super dark pages with super fill in look almost contrast adjusted, and that is kind of what I was talking about the curve, the sort of on press manipulation that can happen. Can preserve some of the light areas, but it doesn't really correct a basic problem with the press or the paper.
And you're talking about a physical version of something like this.
Yep, you got it right there. That's exactly right.
So that they probably, I mean, look at that. You can really see his work quite a bit better there.
Yeah.
So they
And
could have done something like that to lighten up the colors.
uh-huh, to anticipate on press fill in essentially, but like that's it's a dangerous thing. I mean, to me, the best thing is to get a printer that you're really, really happy with and that you think has you have a suitable physical, model for what you're doing. But the thing is, I mean, press tests are incredibly expensive these days because printers are very, very busy. There's not enough printers and there's too much work. It's sort of part of the COVID phenomenon of places shutting down and paper supply being weird. So, nobody's going to do a press test to make sure that, things are going to work on the paper that they selected. You got to just sort of, dive in. But, you know, it's a weird thing. If we can take it personal for a moment, like, you and I usually don't timestamp these videos, but we're recording this on August 5th.
Yeah.
Strange Death of Alex Raymond was supposed to come out on August 3rd. And you'll see right here, I have a beautiful copy of it right here. This is a beautiful copy of the book, except for 4 pages.
Can you show us those pages actually?
Do you want me to?
Yeah, I haven't seen what they look like.
Okay, how about I just give you one?
Yeah. Show me the Seabrook page. I know what the other two would look like without it. It's the first page of what would have been volume 3, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So here is the very first page, what would have been volume 3 of the Strange Death of Alex Raymond. And we have a bunch of black text and nothing else.
Yeah, and it should have the blue like on the page.
That's right.
Left
it should have basically a complete comic book layout behind it. And this was, I'm not going to talk about the exact details of what happened here. Just suffice to say there was a series of quite inexplicable things that happened at the printer. And this is a printer that I've worked with in some capacity for something like 5 years now, and they've done a fantastic job on most of the things that they've done. And this particular thing, they really missed some things. And everything else about the book is great, except for that. And the thing is that not only did these mistakes happen by them in the printing, but they failed to halt the shipment when it was requested of them to halt the shipment. So basically, I got an unbound copy of the book more than 2 weeks ago now, and I saw this
July 21st.
Yeah.
And
I saw this and I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe they did this. I can't believe this happened." I mean, I don't even know what my face looked like. I mean, I must have just been like red, like a beet, but it red.
Well,
like
and you called me and you said, well, they messed up this one page.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it. And I said, you know what? I don't think enough essential content is missing. Let's just go for it. Like that page it was the first page that has any blue on it. So it was kind of a bummer that it doesn't set up that context, but it's like I have 700 copies coming to me. I'm trying to fulfill this Kickstarter before I go back to work, teaching like 11 classes or something like that. Let's go for it. And then Sean said, no, actually it's 4 pages. And so, we can't do that.
Yeah, because my copy was unbound, which means that all the signatures hadn't been cut. I had to cut it open in order to flip through it and find out everything. And I just poured over the whole thing, and I just couldn't believe this was the one thing that had happened. So, I called the printer immediately and got them to halt shipment. And we find out on Sunday, and we started working with them to try to get them to make progress on reprint or possibly fixing the bound books. Now, 2 weeks later, I'm still calling them every single day. What in the world? Why is this delayed? Trying all these different things. I'm not going to go into all the details about it, but suffice to say that it has been a full-time occupation trying to get the fix. And then I find out, thanks to our retailer friend, that
Menachem. Thank you, Menachem.
Thank you very much.
Escape Pod Comics. Yep.
Yeah, Escape Pod Comics, a fantastic store. and
Huntington Beach, New
in
York.
Huntington Beach.
Yeah.
And basically, because of him, we figured out these books actually made it to Diamond. They had not halted the shipments, and because I had told Diamond that the shipment was halted, but that they could expect a reprint, and because the printer had told them, yes, we halted the shipment, Diamond, their very, very efficient warehouse, has actually processed this book as if it was the correction. So they took the shipment and filtered it out to all the different retailers. And so then I was faced with this question. Well, all of these retailers are going to have this book.
And by the way, just real quick, the retailers were given this email
yeah,
that says like, hey, you are obligated to destroy the copies. You're going to get all your money back for the copies and the freight, but you're obligated. Now, I don't think a lot of the retailers are leaving them on the shelf maliciously. I think they probably just didn't see the email, but
right.
we are having people reporting like, hey, what's going on? I found a copy. I thought, I bought a copy today. I thought this wasn't, why haven't we got our Kickstarter stuff?
Right. Right. And
so it's causing mistrust in us and what we were doing.
It's like total havoc. I mean, when you tell somebody don't ship something, and they say, okay, we didn't ship it, you expect that they didn't ship it.
Yeah.
It's a crazy thing, and none of these things are unprecedented. All of them happening at the same time is rather shocking.
Yeah.
Each of these things are understandable errors that can happen. If you run a publishing company for 10 years, some of the people I talked to about this issue the past couple of days have been in publishing for 10 or 20 years. And several of them said like, oh yeah, I had that happen. Oh yeah, I had that happen. But all those were on different projects.
We got it all at once.
Right. So, but then the question is, do you let the thing go? And the thing to me is, it was just never an issue for me, because the authors of this made it a certain way. Now, this is a complex book. This is an interesting question of authorship. Dave has allowed Carson to finish the book, but Dave made 180 pages of it out by himself, and then Carson and Dave together made 60 or 70 or 80 pages together, and then Carson made a coda of it that includes Dave's all these other work. Right? Anyway, so it's a complicated. The question of authorship aside, this is not how they intended the book to be read. This is not how Carson intended his coda to be read. It doesn't even make sense to not have these things. And so to me, I'm on the record as a critic. I used to write for the Comics Journal. I used to write it for other smaller comic sites. I'm on the record as a critic saying that there is a moral obligation on the part of a publisher to try to represent the artist's work in its best possible light. And the choice was a little easier in this case because it wasn't our fault. I mean, this is somebody else's mistake to pay for, and this is someone else's burden to shoulder. I mean, the pain for us is that you guys don't get to read the book right now, but
it could cost us sales in the long run if 1,200 copies or whatever got shipped to shops, and either they're just not aware. So if you see these out in the wild, like, please let your retailer know, like, hey, check your email. These aren't supposed to be on the shelf. They're misprints. You're supposed to destroy them. We'll assume that most of the copies out there, just people don't know. But, also, like, a retailer this is now 100% pure profit for them. They didn't pay for this book. And if they sell it, it's pure profit for them.
Well, yeah, and I hope people that know will know that this doesn't represent how it was supposed to, read. There's missing content. There's 4 pages that don't have content that were supposed to be on there. So it's already a very dense, very tangled book, and to have something that's actually missing like that, is damaging to it. And so the thing is that I feel like there is a certain kind of, maybe it's minor in the larger scale of things, but there's a certain kind of moral imperative to present the artist's work the way that they intended to present it, and in the best method they can possibly do so. And so for me, when I was talking to someone at the printer who wanted to make this right financially versus actually recalling the book. I mean, it was just no question to me that that was not an option. And it didn't even matter what number they said to me. It's not right. You know,
Yeah.
it's not the book that people intended to see. And you know, I just thought there was some crossover in this sense. You know, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that this is like that the last God, that's the name of the book.
The Last God. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this is a debacle, like, you know, it's not missing pages or something like that. I'm just saying that, like, um, you know, the choices that a publisher makes, to me, should be informed by the intention of the artists. And, you know, hopefully that people present things in the best light possible in the way that's the most suitable to the content.
Yeah, and I think for this book, The Last God, I don't know what it looked like in the original, like, monthly printed floppies. Maybe this is the exact same quality as the monthly floppies. Like I said, I saw digital versions of it. So to me, that digital version is like what the artists intended, you know, and I know there's a difference between digital and print. So yeah, I did, like you said, this is not a debacle of a print job. You could, if I had not seen those other things and I just flipped through this book, I probably still would have thought it was pretty cool. I would have been like, you know, it looks like some of the Marvel movies where, like, unless you're in a totally dark room, you can't really tell what the hell is going on in some of the pictures, which is from a storytelling standpoint. But plenty of the pages look perfectly fine. It's a totally readable book. So my complaints are based on preconceived notions from what I'd seen on a screen looking much better. So yeah, it's not that kind of, you know, like, I appreciate that the mistake that we had is those were my pages that I made, and, you know, decisions that you and I made about how that material is supposed to be presented. So it's not that level, but it is, yeah, it's just when you've seen that you can do it right, it still is disappointing. I don't know how the artist feels about it. Maybe they're totally cool with it, but I would imagine, like, if my work got reproduced like this, I'd be a little disappointed. And then for also, I think you have an ethical responsibility to the audience. Like, I mean, this was, like I said, a $50 book.
Right.
It's not bound in a way that I can, like, it's glued down. It's not bound in a way where I can get into, there's a lot of gutter loss basically. And so there's, like, it's difficult to see when there's a 2-page spread. I don't actually know it's a 2-page spread because the print quality's hard to look at. And then that makes the reading experience kind of difficult. A lot of balloons are, like, almost lost up into the gutter. So I think there's a responsibility there as well, that, like, I get it. If this was like, oh, we're trying to make a $20 copy because everyone doesn't make $50 and you got to cut corners. But I mean, what our book is, $40 copy, and it's got, you know, everything at the top of the line. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I'm sure it's cheaper paper. I'm sure there's financial reasons, but I think that ethics goes to the artist and to the consumer as well.
I just one little anecdote for you guys. When I started doing the Service Restoration Project in 2014, the first printer that we printed with was recommended. Well, had a social connection to somebody who had been at the previous printer that David worked with, and they had a plant that was nearby, near enough that I could drive down to do press tests and actually be there present on the plant floor and everything. And we had a fairly long, fairly expensive press test where I worked with the pressman with their quite aged web offset printer and actually drilled down, like, how do we make this look good on your press, which at the time I didn't realize was the reason that it looked bad is because their ink formulation was bad. Their press was poorly maintained. It was old. Just everything about it was it's a facility that's designed to print like romance novels or something, not, not, I know that now. At the time, I was like, intimidated by the size of the press and the sound that it made. And, it's this huge, terrifying machine that could eat you up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I was intimidated by the fact that we were spending like $800 so that I could just be there for 2 hours, basically.
Yeah.
But at the end of the press test, after talking to the pressman, we had something that was pretty good. And I was like, okay, so here's the secret formula for this particular press. We're going to, run the water level low, and, the ink formulation is like slightly tackier than normal, and yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. And then a month later, we go to do the actual printing, and I'm gonna attend the printing, and I get there, and it just looks terrible. Everything looks terrible as it's coming
with
up.
all the same like water levels, and
they had the same settings, a different press person, and they just hadn't maintained their press, or it hadn't been cleaned recently, or something about the ink formulation was just slightly different, and it just looked, it was so washed out, had so much fill in, and it was just like I didn't even know what to do. I was literally you'd see that people do that in movies sometimes, like
the Desperate Man by Corvée.
Right. That was me while this press is and they stopped the press, and I talked to the guy, and we tried out a few different things, and it looked terrible. And what was I going to do? We'd already paid.
Are there environmental issues like humidity, temperature? I mean, that all has to be affecting how the ink is.
Yeah, they're in warehouses. I mean, most of these presses are maintained in a very large, dehumidified environment, large warehouse space and things like that. I think most of the issues in this case is just the maintenance and the age of the press. But, basically what it boiled down to is I was still there, and there was nothing I could do. Yeah. And, that was the first High Society restored volume, and we printed it again from the exact same files, 4 years later, and it looked fantastic. With a different printer, which is all to say that like this stuff is infuriating, when it happens. And it can be something that's just like totally devastating to people who like care about it. And, like we said, we don't know actually who cares about this particular thing. It's something that we happen to notice on this particular job. We know who cares about our book, which is us, and probably you guys, if you, ordered it or planning on reading it. And the thing is that, any of these types of things, the best thing you can do is like always try to use the materials that are most suitable to what you're doing. And always try to work with the people who, are gonna do the job, and people who are dependable. And if they don't do the job right, are gonna fix it. That was the one and only time that I printed with that particular printer. And it's just because when I was actually there was nothing I could do. What was I gonna do? Jump in and fix the press?
Yeah, well, they just weren't set up for what you needed.
Yeah. That's right. It was the wrong, fit. I think about that a lot sometimes if when something frustrating is happening, that like, I think a lot of times it's, you have to just sort of point yourself in another direction next time.
Yeah.
In a case of that book, I mean, I knew it was going to be reprinted again. It was nothing we could do at the time to fix it. It was all like, as the guy told me when I was complaining, well, it's within industry spec. It's like, well,
yeah,
because industry spec is a bunch of shit.
Well, and again, I mean, I think I'm kind of constantly skeptical about what we're doing here on this channel, because it is like, I think Tori makes fun of me too. I was gonna have her do another one of those smash the like button videos where she just looks up and she's like, I don't know, if you want to hear like two cranky guys who look at things in a way no one else looks at them, and just want to complain that selfishly they want their books to look better, smash the like button, because I think most people who go pick this up will enjoy the book. It's still got good art. It's a fun story, but I do think it's also important that like there just be more information out there, that people see the kind of comparisons and are like, holy crap, my book could have looked that way and it looks this way. And I do think is more people get educated. I don't know. Maybe people don't care, but I do.
Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe we can, maybe one day everything will be perfect and we can talk about the story.
yeah. Well, I mean, we'll have some other stuff we talk about the
Yeah,
story
I'm
for
just
sure.
kidding. Well,
Yeah.
I think it would be fun for us to sort of branch out, and I think next week we're going to talk about Kripax,
Yeah. Is
Kripax,
that
um,
Creepax?
and we
I
might talk
like
about
Creepax, but I know that's not right.
Kripax,
Yeah.
and maybe talk about some issues of in panel. What's the word I'm looking for?
Just the way he composes. That's what I want to talk
Composition.
about with him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
composition. So we're gonna mix things up, but thanks for listening, and I really hope that you guys are going to be able to pick this up in a matter of weeks. And let me tell you, the pages that are not missing tremendous amounts of information, which is there's only 4, look fantastic. This is a beautiful book. It is giant. My head is giant, so I don't know if you can tell, but this
Sean's
is
a
bigger.
big dude. I've met Sean.
Yeah.
Sean, how tall are you?
6'4".
Yeah,
So this
and
is
you have a 6'4" head. You don't have a tiny head on a 6'4" frame.
So this is a very large book, murder weapon, as David Birdsong told me, and they did a fantastic job of the printing. Other than that, and other than the critical error that is causing a complete recall and meltdown, and I really hope that you guys enjoy it, and also I hope that you guys enjoy The Last God.
And if you do see that book that Sean just held up in a shop, please let them know that it is a misprint and they should destroy it. And if you happen to get a sense that people are aware of that fact and selling it anyways, we would probably like to know which shops those are so we can contact them and be a little more forceful.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm very friendly. I just, I just want people to know that there's a person behind it or people behind it, and these people are not happy with something that's not right. And we don't want you guys to buy a book and be like, "What the hell is this?" I mean, you might say that anyway during the course of the story.
Very likely. Yeah.
So, all right, Jack, you give us our sign off.
Yeah, and Jack, take it away.